Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! Ja Morant! Insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies used a huge second half to overcome the Spurs, and we even got a poster out of it. The Grizzlies' big three all delivered, and Memphis walks out of San Antonio with a big, memorable win. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about this victory. Before I do, just a thank you to John Bucher, who recently signed up for my Patreon. If you want to join the Patreon, it's patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you join up over there, you get a monthly bonus episode. You can also join the listener Slack channel. Consider helping out. Patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. So, I guess the storyline from the game is Ja Morant threw it down over Victor Wembanyama. Of course, it was after the whistle, but memories are forever. An indelible image of Ja Morant going up over Wembanyama. Perhaps Wembanyama relented a little bit, didn't jump his highest, but he still jumped. He still fouled Ja Morant, hit him in the head. Ja throws it in for just a great viral social media moment, a good memory for everybody. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the Grizzlies beat the Spurs, and it did not look like they were going to for the whole game. The Grizzlies trailed at halftime. Wemby had 8 blocks in the first half, but the Grizzlies scored 78 points in the second half. The offense was absolutely clicking. You got strong performances from Ja, from Desmond, from Jaren, specifically in the fourth quarter. Also, Luke Kennard and Santi Aldama were both very impressive in this game. And because of that, you get a needed victory. And now the Grizzlies, who previously had won 14 straight games against the Spurs. This was something I took great pride in. That includes the play-in game a few years ago. But they had that 14-game winning streak over the Spurs snapped last season at the end of the year. So hopefully with this win, you can establish a new streak. But at the very least, the Grizzlies, who suffered at the hands of the Spurs for essentially 2 decades, have now won 15 of their last 16 games against San Antonio. Also, maybe Luke Kennard likes playing against San Antonio. If you remember a couple of years ago, there was a massive comeback. Luka hit a half quarter in that game, ended up tying it, or I believe assisting Dylan Brooks for the tying shot going to overtime. But Luke Kennard, big game in this one. Maybe he likes playing the Spurs. But let's break down some of the stuff that happens. And I think I'm going to skip ahead to the fourth quarter because so much interesting stuff happened in the fourth quarter. So much interesting stuff that specifically pertains to things we've been talking about on recent episodes. One thing that was interesting in the fourth quarter was Jaren Jackson Jr. shook off a shaky first 3 quarters to have a big fourth. In just the fourth quarter, Jaren had 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Also, by the way, notably, Jaren Jackson Jr. played the entire fourth quarter. And we get into the rotation question. So we get into the fact that Taylor Jenkins did alter the substitution pattern for the Grizzlies' top 3 players. It was absolutely changed in this second half and in this fourth quarter. One of the things he changed, Jaren Jackson Jr. played every fourth quarter minute, except for the final 30 seconds when they cleared the bench. That is one thing I think I questioned more than Ja Morant's minutes. In the previous game, my biggest question was, why did Jaren get subbed out after being in foul trouble, not playing much in the third quarter? I figured Jaren could go the whole fourth quarter. This is the loss to the Rockets. Well, after having foul trouble against the Spurs, not playing that many third quarter minutes, he did play the entire fourth quarter. And coming into the fourth quarter, Jaren only had 5 points. He was 2 for 11 from the field. He absolutely was having difficulty going against Wembanyama. And he still missed some shots he probably would have normally made in the fourth quarter with Wemby guarding him. But Jaren, to get those 14 fourth quarter points, he took 13 field goal attempts. I think that's very interesting. I'm not smart enough to know, frankly, if this was a team adjustment or a focus based on previous games. Maybe it was just the randomness of any night in the NBA, different things happen. But Jaren took 13 fourth quarter field goal attempts. Meanwhile, Ja Morant in the fourth quarter only took 3. Desmond Bane took 4. So Jaren was absolutely carrying the offensive load and was the primary focus, it seemed like, offensively for the Grizzlies. Now, the Ja Morant playing time. This, of course, has been a huge point of discussion among Grizzlies fans. In the previous 3 games since returning from injury, Ja Morant had subbed out midway through the fourth quarter. Typically, the pattern had been, and if memory serves, this has been the pattern for most of the year with Ja Morant. Ja's been playing most of the third quarter. He plays heavy minutes in the third quarter. Then he subs out near the end of the quarter, gets a quick rest. But then he comes back in to start the fourth quarter. The last 3 games before the Spurs game, Ja Morant started the fourth quarter. They've been doing that in other games this year. Ja Morant starts the fourth quarter, then he subs out. Apparently to the chagrin of many, he'll sub out with like 7 minutes left. He'll sit on the bench for a couple of minutes and come back in. And I think in these close games the Grizzlies have had, 2 close losses to the Rockets and then a close win over the Timberwolves, Ja's absence on the court was felt. When there's like 5 minutes to go, 6 minutes to go, you're like, why isn't Ja Morant out there? Well, because he played a ton of minutes in the second half up until that point. Well, your cries have been answered. Taylor Jenkins heard you. He heard us talking about this, and they switched it up. Ja Morant subbed out midway through the third quarter. At that point, I think we knew, something's going to be different for this game. Ja Morant comes out midway through the third, is out for a few minutes, then comes back in to finish the third quarter. This is different. Then, when the fourth quarter starts, Ja Morant is not out there. You have a lineup anchored by Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. So you start the fourth quarter with Ja Morant on the bench, so Ja Morant can play the final 7-8 minutes of the game. This is what everybody wanted, right? So Ja checks in with 7.5 minutes left and then plays the final 7 minutes. What's funny about this to me, a couple things. One, that meant Ja Morant only played 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. The previous game where people were unhappy with the substitution pattern, Ja Morant played 10 minutes in the fourth quarter. That's 3 more fourth quarter minutes of Ja Morant. That's interesting. Also, despite having a huge second half as a team, scoring 78 points in the second half, the Grizzlies had this scoreless spell in the fourth quarter. They went 3.5 minutes without a point. They had built up this awesome double-digit lead. Jay Huff came in, was raining 3-pointers. The bench was playing well. The starters were playing well. You turned the game around. You went from down 12 to up 12. But then the Spurs started making a run. Stephen Castle's making some athletic plays, getting some putbacks. Champagny wasn't missing shots in this game. So Ja Morant subs in, and you're only a minute into this scoreless spell. The Grizzlies do not score for the first 2.5 minutes that Ja Morant plays in the fourth quarter. So it's totally reversed to me. I thought it was ironic. In previous games, we're like, hey, we're not scoring with 6 minutes left and 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Why isn't Ja Morant out there? Well, guess what? We still didn't score at the exact same time frame in the fourth quarter. Now, I don't think there's a conclusion to be drawn from this. I think it's randomness. I think the way the games did not work out for the Grizzlies in previous games, I don't know if it mattered who was on the court. It's just like in the Rockets game, the first game, or the last game before the Spurs game, Rockets made all their jumpers. They made every shot. But in this game, it was funny. Ja Morant ends up playing 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. The team goes scoreless for 2.5 minutes when he checks back into the game. But of course, the moral, the takeaway, if you win, you made the right decision. That's not useful for how to make your decisions, but it worked out. I think it's funny. Someone on social media pointed out to me that, yes, this is the correct path. They'd rather have Ja play the final 7 minutes than sit out these crucial mid-minutes of the fourth quarter. My question is, are you really saying if your two options are Ja Morant plays 10 minutes in the fourth quarter, the first 5 and the last 5, or he just plays 7 minutes, the final 7, you're picking just the final 7 minutes? I don't know the answer. I lean towards, yes, I absolutely would rather Ja play 10 minutes in the fourth quarter. I might rather Ja play, if it's a question between 10 minutes or 7 minutes, let him play the first 10 minutes of the fourth quarter and sit the final 2 as opposed to play the final 7 minutes. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's wrong. But I think I would probably err on the side of just play Ja more minutes. What's also notable, so now that they switched up the Ja Morant substitution pattern, where instead of playing a huge chunk early in the second half, then coming out, then playing most of the fourth quarter, but having a brief spell where you check out midway through the fourth, they did a substitution pattern where you had 3 stints. You played 6 minutes, you came up for a few minutes, you came back in for like 4 minutes, then you set out for 4 or 5 minutes, then you came back in. So 3 different stints for Ja Morant. Again, because of that, Ja only played 15 minutes in the second half. We're talking about way fewer minutes played in the second half and in the fourth quarter than Ja Morant had in any of the previous 3 games. Again, the moral is when you win, you're just happy with that decision that led to the victory. And the Grizzlies had a huge run to close the final, 5 minutes of the game. After the Spurs cut it to 1, then the floodgates opened. Jaren Jackson Jr. was cooking. Desmond Bane was cooking. Santi Aldama was cooking. Also, a 5-point play really helped. Took the Grizzlies from up 5 to up 10. That was a Ja Morant step-back 3-pointer that put the Grizzlies up 10. You also had a Jaren Jackson Jr. Huge 3-pointer step back on Victor Wembanyama. The Grizzlies had an 18-3 run over the final minutes of the game to pull out the victory. Also looking at the way the substitution pattern affected Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., I thought it was notable. Second straight game, one of Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. was on the court at all times. I think that's what we all want. They had 3 minutes where both Ja and Jaren were off the court at the same time. By the way, that's more time than both Ja and Jaren were off the court in the Rockets loss. I mean, we're talking 17 seconds more, so not that big of a difference. But guess what? In this game, all 3 of those minutes where both Ja and Jaren were off the court in the third quarter, you outscored the Spurs by 4. That's much better than getting outscored by 13 in the 3 minutes that Ja and Jaren are both off the court together. And all this rotation talk, frankly, it's a little bit overblown, and we should focus more on how Ja Morant actually played. Like, Ja Morant played an amazing game. Beyond the highlight reel dunk that did not count but counted in our hearts, Ja Morant had an awesome basketball game. Ja Morant was playmaking, and we now have seen this direct correlation between Ja Morant assists and Grizzlies victories. Ja Morant had 8 assists in the first half, 12 for the game. Right now, the Grizzlies are 14-3 when Ja gets at least 5 assists. That doesn't feel like a high bar to get over. And yet, Ja has 7 games this year where he has fewer than 5 assists. The Grizzlies are 2-5 in those games. And then there's the turnovers. Ja finished this game with only 2 turnovers. Right now, the Grizzlies are 12-1 if Ja has 3 or fewer turnovers. 4-7 if he has 4 or more turnovers. And those splits now between wins and losses, these startling splits for assists and turnovers. In wins, Ja Morant is averaging 8.6 assists and 3.1 turnovers. In losses, 5.4 assists and 5.6 turnovers. I mean, this was close to a perfect performance from Ja Morant. 21 points, 12 assists, 8 of 11 on 2-pointers, 1 out of 2 on three-pointers, including that big fourth quarter make. 2 steals, 2 turnovers. Basketball Reference has this thing called game score. It's kind of a rudimentary stat where they just put all your stats together and come up with a score to say how good it was. They rank this as Ja's 4th best game of the season, but I was really impressed with how well he played. I mean, maybe last game he was still sick. Remember, he was questionable for that Rockets game with illness. Maybe the illness plus the Rockets' rugged defense wore him down a bit in the fourth quarter. Whatever the reason, Ja Morant was great in this one. Also, Desmond Bane continues playing excellently. Since December 1st, 19 games, Desmond is averaging 20 points per game, 6 assists per game, 1.6 steals per game. His splits, 53, 41, 91. And this one had 21 points, 6 out of 9 on 2-pointers, 2 out of 4 on 3-pointers. Only 2 assists, but no turnovers. And you get big performances. Again, Jaren, Ja, and Desmond. Our buddy Sean Coleman lets us know, by the way, this is only the second time that those 3 guys have played 3 straight games with each of them playing over 30 minutes. Now, that's only a tiny bit cherry-picked, but it does demonstrate just how rare it's been, frankly, that those guys are all healthy and all able to play a bunch of minutes over the years. Speaking of health, by the way, Marcus Smart missed this game. Marcus missed his 85th game since he's been on the Grizzlies. If he misses 10 more games, he will have been less available percentage-wise than Justice Winslow was when he was on the Grizzlies. Also, another comparison point I've been having fun with. Right now, Marcus has been available for 31% of Grizzlies games. Chandler Parsons was available for 39% of Grizzlies games when he was on the Grizzlies. Anyways, the big 3 played great. Maybe Jaren not so much in the first 3 quarters, but he came through when it mattered in the fourth quarter. The supporting cast, also a very nice job here. Also, they leaned on some maybe not typical guys going on the stretch. I'll get into that and more after this quick break. All right, so Luke Kennard and Santi Aldama had absolutely massive games. Luke Kennard played 30 minutes, had 15 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists. Matched a season high with 5 3-pointers. Set a season high with those 9 rebounds. That's the second most minutes played for Luke this season. Santi, meanwhile, he had a huge 20-10 game off the bench. His third 20-10 game of the season. He has 7 now in his career. In just the second half, he had 11 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists. By the way, Santi made a 3-pointer in this game. That moved him into a tie with DeAnthony Melton for the 13th most made 3-pointers in Grizzlies franchise history. Because Santi was playing so well, Jake LaRavia did not play in the second half until the final 30 seconds when the benches were cleared. Also, Zach Edey lost a lot of playing time in this one, due, in fact, to Santi playing really, really well. Also, I think due to the fact that Jay Huff made those 3-pointers when he came in the second half. Zach Edey got the start. Zach Edey got some highlights. Zach Edey got his own poster on Victor Wembanyama on a dunk early in the game. I think people have correctly been pointing out Zach Edey is getting ignored probably too much on offense. Like, give the big man a touch. Well, they actually gave Zach Edey some touches very, very early in the game. He got 2 post-ups early in the first quarter. He got one on Devin Vassell and then one on Wembanyama where he made a short bank shot. Then he got that dunk. All 3 of those shots were plays where he was assisted in the paint and he scored. Now, after that, Wemby got the best of him a couple of times. Then in the second half, Zach Edey only played 5 minutes. Now, I understand Zach Edey fans and Zach Edey defenders thinking like that is a terrible misuse of this talented big man. I'm more agnostic on the situation. I think specifically in this game, like they weren't doing that well. They were still down. They started the second half off on a good note. They outscored the Spurs in the third quarter when Edey was out there to start the third quarter, but then they actually did go on a bigger run when the subs came in. They had a 20-7 run. Aldama played well. Jay Huff played well. And, of course, you played heavy minutes for Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren played the entire fourth quarter. And so there you have to decide who's going to be the other big we're going to close with. It wasn't Brandon Clark. Like, Brandon Clark also did not play a minute in the fourth quarter. Brandon Clark had been the option in most of the recent games about which big you close the game with alongside Jaren Jackson Jr. So Zach didn't play. Also, Brandon didn't play because they preferred going with Santi Aldama. I think if Jay Huff had missed his three-pointers in the third quarter, there was a brief spell where Jay Huff played a couple of minutes in the fourth. I think that would have gone to Edey, but because Jay Huff made his shots, they decided, let's go with this hot hand approach. That's why Edey didn't play in the fourth quarter, only played 5 minutes in the second half. If you don't like it, I totally understand. Completely, I think, justifiable opinion and position to have. Overall, though, for the game, Edey's numbers: 6 points, 5 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 poster dunk on Victor Wembanyama. Another rookie starter who did not play that many second half minutes was Jalen Wells. Jalen Wells missed 6 out of his 7 field goal attempts in this game. Only played 8 minutes in the second half. Again, they went with the veterans. They went with Luke Kennard. They went with Santi Aldama. And then the big three. Off the bench, Scottie Pippen Jr. had a positive impact on this game. Scottie had 5 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds just in the second half. Meanwhile, in the first half, he had an unbelievable highlight as he picked the pocket of Chris Paul, just out in space, just pressuring him one-on-one, full court press, picks Chris Paul's pocket, gets the easy layup, and then draws an offensive foul on Chris right after that. Subjectively, I don't enjoy Chris Paul that much. I cheer against him, and I was absolutely delighted by this sequence. Nice job there from Scottie Pippen Jr. Brandon Clark was not leaned on as much. Like I was saying, 5 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block in 11 minutes. LaRavia, I thought was good, but he had a team worst plus minus. Again, I hate to say, maybe I'm not smart enough twice in one episode. Maybe I'm not smart enough to observe what he was doing wrong that caused him not to get back in the game. Personally, I think it was more about what other guys were doing well and then just shortening the rotation because of that. I thought Jake continued his strong play despite being a team worst minus 12 in the first half. He had 3 points and 4 rebounds. By the way, Huff's final stat line, he had 11 points, made 3 out of 5 three-pointers. He missed his first 2 shots and then was 4 for 4 after that. And now the Grizzlies have to face the Spurs team. There's a rematch on Friday night. It should be, honestly, must-see television. It's on ESPN, so very exciting national TV game. I'd say it's hard to beat a team twice in a row on their home court, especially the way this game went down with all the social media clips being Wembanyama getting dunked on. So, that's going to be a challenge, but it's going to be an exciting challenge, and I look forward to watching that. And with that, I think we can wrap up the show. Not a lot more to say. Fingers crossed. Marcus Smart is coming back soon. Oh, by the way, I guess we can do a little big picture check-in. The Grizzlies are 26-15. They're at the exact halfway point of the season. So that means the Grizzlies are on pace for 52 wins. I assume everyone who's not horrible at math already put that together. It's going well. Yes, we can nitpick about the team's performance. Maybe it's not a nitpick. I think it's a serious concern. The team's performance on the road against good teams. I'm very encouraged by this win. The Grizzlies were favored by 3.5 points. I thought that felt high. Maybe I'm too close to the situation to view it objectively, and I was nervous about their chances on the road. But Vegas thought they would win, and they did, in fact, cover. They ran away with this game. A couple more fun stats, by the way. Ja Morant, in the game against the Rockets, I missed this. He passed Jason Williams to move into 3rd in franchise history in career assists. He now only trails Mike Conley and Mark Gasol. And oh, by the way, Luke Kennard's 15 points on Wednesday night moved him past Kosta Koufos and Jared Bayless for 56th on the all-time Grizzlies scoring list. Good job, Luke Kennard. Let's have more games like this. Anyways, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to everyone who has joined my Patreon. If you want to support my show, do that. Patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you don't want to support, just write me a 5-star review wherever you're consuming this podcast. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Tell other people about this show. Anyways, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.